Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
Yes, wherever you are on our amazing life-filled planet.
I'm Ariel.
I'm Shaya.
Welcome to being here. Today's episode, Going with the Flow. You probably can't hear it, but our cat is downstairs somewhere. Doesn't sound like
And she's not going with the flow. She's disagreeing with the way her life is showing up.
Well, life often shows up quite differently than we expect, and you can either fight it or embrace it.
You know, it reminds me of an old John Wayne movie when I was a young man, very young, child even, watching television. And there's a runaway coach. And he rides up to the side of the coach that's being pulled by 4 runaway horses. And there's a damsel in the coach in distress.
Yes.
And the driver has lost the reins and is incapacitated, probably by an Indian's arrow or something. And John jumps onto the back horse and works his way up to the front horse. And then he grabs the reins, and you know what he does?
What?
He goes, "Giddy up." He doesn't pull back on the reins because the horse will resist that. He drives it forward so it thinks it's in control, and then he pulls back on the reins. Well, a lot of times life shows up the way it does, and we pull back on the reins rather than engage in it like it's our idea.
And then from there, we're in control.
That's right. From there, you're in control.
And you can steer it or pull back on it or any other such thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Today, if you have a desire to be fully in control of your own life, and since you're listening to this podcast, we recommend that first you include we finish each other's sentences when we do.
And that you listen in a way not to dissect what we're saying to find the flaws in it, or even agree with us, but to hear what's being said by allowing what's being said to come into you rather than filter it through what you already believe to be reality.
In effect, that's you holding the reins and saying, yes, giddy up, Ariel and Shai, giddy up there, guests. Let's go. And you go fully into it.
As
And
though
see
it's
what
your
happens.
idea. The other thing is this, the idea of truly listening, not to agree or disagree or find fault with, but to hear what's being said, will pull you into the current moment of your life. And that is transformational, because we spend most of our time in our thoughts about what we like or don't like or want or don't want, rather than allowing ourselves to be with what is.
I want to brag about Shia for a minute.
Oh,
and
good,
then,
my favorite.
And then describe something that has disrupted his ability to go with the flow. We've been fly fishing for a number of years, and the newer version of our style of fly fishing is a 2-handed rod called a spey rod. And one of the things that happens with any fly fishing system is there are different kind of lines that go on the fly rod that make the rod perform differently. So Shai is really expert at setting up a fly rod so that it works for each of us, because we have different styles, but also so that they work. And one of the things that's happened recently is, it's spring here when we're recording this. The world is waking up. We're waking up to getting back involved in that passion of fly fishing, where some of it went a bit dormant over the winter. And in his excitement, he's been watching videos about fly fishing styles. And one of the things that's happened is, as he went back out on the river, he started thinking about what he learned and became micro disrupted. And his casting sucked.
I would have said suffered, but sucked is a more precise description from my point of view.
Well, if you do 100 casts and maybe 5 or 6 of them are the way you normally cast, then chances are you're thinking about what to do or telling yourself how to do it. And oftentimes, and I told him from experience, because I was a person who spoke to myself a lot about, and now you do this and go slow and use your bottom hand. And if, when I'm talking to myself, rather than just trusting my body, trusting myself to instinctually interact with life and with this fly rod.
What's interesting about it is no matter how I tell myself now, I need to not use my upper hand, I need to use my lower hand. It's as though those words fell into the wind. I didn't hear them. Even though I said them a moment before the cast, I still used my upper hand.
See, working on yourself, including
Doesn't
working
work.
on your casting, doesn't work. Telling yourself how to be a better you just reinforces what you've been doing that you've already judged as wrong.
Yes.
What we're talking about on being here regularly, but right now, is about being here rather than telling yourself how to be here. It's an observational potential where you simply see without trying to change anything. You just notice, oh, look, I'm commenting. Oh, notice I'm agreeing. Oh, and you can skip the
Berating part.
and skip the telling yourself how to do it better part.
Right. You know, your life is showing up moment by moment in this moment. And thinking about it just takes you out of the moment, just takes you out of your experience of living.
So I want to go back to casting for a minute because I have often.
So what was this brag you were going to tell me?
Well, I have often admired your casting and wished that I could cast as elegantly or as far as you. And one of the things that I was just inspired by is recognizing that when you're talking to yourself, you've disrupted that ability for you.
Well, you know, the truth is I admire your casting. There's a consistency to it. You know, you're just very excellent at it. And I admire the tenacity and persistence that it took to find that space in yourself.
Speaking of tenacity, let's take our first guest.
Oh, yes.
Micah, welcome to being here. And please tell everyone where you're zooming in from.
Hi, I'm Micah and I'm zooming in from Düsseldorf in Germany.
Oh, so lovely to see you. I know that when we release this podcast, it won't be visual, but the flowers in your background look really lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, I bought them 3 days ago, and it's really funny because I'm in the luxury situation. I usually get every week some flowers from a shop. And for whatever reason, I wanted to go into a shop by myself instead of a van coming in front of our door and there is someone bringing me something. I wanted to go to the shop and I saw them and I immediately fell in love with these. And I said, I want to have them. And now I enjoy them every minute when I see them.
Sweet. What can we do for you today?
I was really, when I read the title, Going with the Flow, I think that's one of my topics. Being in the moment, going with the flow, being kind to myself. These are things I know in my life. I'm 52 years old and yeah, these are things I can see quite often. And in the last weeks or months, I was quite hard with myself. And I could see that last week there was a moment when, I don't know, for whatever reason, I stopped being hard. And then it was like small puzzles. So everything fell into place and there was an ease. Perhaps it's spring, perhaps it's me. I don't know what it is, but it felt much lighter than it felt the last weeks.
Well, maybe you stopped working on yourself.
Maybe.
Maybe you just forgot to work on you like a project.
Yeah.
I know we, sometime in the last half year, I don't remember exactly. We did an episode of the show called "Hey, I'm good at this," and one of the things that I've allowed myself when I've struggled, for instance, with my casting, or I'm being hard on myself, or I'm talking to myself in, that's just a metaphor of a place where I have traditionally talked to myself about how to be a better me, or look to somebody who I thought was better than I and admired, and where if I can allow for myself, hey, I'm good at this, and let go of talking to myself in general and just play, it's shocking how good I am in an instant. And as you're talking, Micah, it just, even giving yourself license to go to the flower shop and pick out something that you love. I also think it's possible that when they come to your door next, you can look and find something you love.
Well, you know, your attitude has everything to do with everything.
Yeah. And I'm working at the moment for a client, and a lot of the managers who are also working for these clients, they are doing assessment center. And I did that last week or the week before too. And I got last week the result of these assessment center, like a letter or like a description. And what was mentioned there was really also touching for me, because the guy who did the assessment center with me, he said, you want to do everything 140%. And if you have this picture that everything has to be perfect and also work with others on this professional level, it's quite difficult for you.
Well, you know something, that's somebody who's telling you to slow down.
Yeah.
That's telling you, stop working so hard so I don't have to work so hard.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the movie Big with Tom Hanks. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but he's a 12-year-old child, and he makes a wish that he could be big.
Yeah.
And he wakes up the next morning in a 6-foot body, you know, mature Tom Hanks body. And he goes to work at a toy company because he gets a job. His mother thinks he's been attacked because there's this man in her son's room now. And so he has to leave home. And he gets a job in this toy factory. He can use a computer. So he's working, a 12-year-old in a 30-year-old body, working at his workstation, and the guy next to him says, slow down, you're ruining the curve. You're working too efficiently. Everybody else has to work better. And you know, we like going slow.
I see it as a balance between that and your drive for your inner perfection is unattainable. That you make yourself miserable by not just doing your best, but by then assessing what else is possible in a comparative nature, so that you don't have a win at the end of the day, it's like, well, but I didn't accomplish that, or they didn't do.
Yeah. And
You know, Mike, it's okay to take a breath.
yeah.
You know, getting somewhere may not be the goal in life. Maybe the goal in life is being where you are rather than getting to a better place. Because, you know, if this isn't it, then nothing is. So no matter how good it gets in the future, that won't be it either, in a mindset of this isn't it. But if you can relax into this moment with what you've got, then you have some mastery in life.
Yeah. I would love to come to that point, or perhaps I just have to.
Well, but you say that as though you're not there in this moment.
Yeah, but at the moment, I feel as if everything is fine. I'm here. I'm my, just the way I am, and you both are also, yeah. At the moment, it's fine, but I can.
What else is there than the moment? You see, you're working on a mythical moment. You're worrying about how the future is going to turn out rather than being in this moment of your life.
Yeah.
Are you fighting with Stefan?
No, at the moment, not.
You sure? The reason I say that is you seem to be disagreeing with me,
Okay.
even when you're agreeing.
Okay.
I'm missing two things that I often feel with you. One is this like bubbling joy, and the other is a harmonious, like we're all playing in partnership. It's as if there's in theater, one of the things I loved when I was a kid, in like high school, we did a performance of the play Oklahoma. And so it was a musical and it was really big. But one of the things that happened was some of the dances happened behind a scrim. And a scrim is like it's a translucent white curtain. So you can see the movements, but you can't see the details of what's happening. It was all very wonderfully mystical and magical. But operating with you behind a scrim is a little different experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, how I notice it is I say something to you and then I wonder what my point was.
Okay.
Because it didn't go in, it bounced back on me. So there wasn't a true listening. I know this already. When are you going to get on to the important stuff?
Okay.
Do I have your mindset?
Given, I know people can't see it, but she is blushing mightily. She is the flowers behind her right now.
Right,
So
that's true.
I think you hit on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it occurs to me, I know that we generally finish speaking with someone, we have the segment and we have the listener spotlights where people come on, and the lovely Naz inviting people to things, and then we come back and talk about what's next. But it occurs to me that the ability to relax into being yourself can take maintenance. And I know we have Monday nights, we have Saturday mornings, we have once a month, we have a Tuesday Living Made Easy, and we have weekend seminars that happen. And I'm really clear that some people have an appetite to do them. Some people come both Monday and Saturday, even from Europe or from Hong Kong or from wherever. Some people come occasionally. But I find it really refreshing when people tell themselves the truth and give themselves license to invest in themselves in a Saturday or a Monday or a Tuesday or a weekend, where that striving to get ahead can melt away just in the process of listening to other people, and what remains is your brilliance. And
But you didn't do anything to discover your brilliance. It shows up and you're leaving you alone. See, because your internal conversation is about you and how you're doing, and you're not doing enough and should do more, and like that.
And if you, as you said, been being hard on yourself some lately, you just may want to look at what you've been investing in and give yourself, excuse me, the license to play at some of the upcoming seminars. And sometimes it requires pre-scheduling. You know, I now schedule out in advance. I look times for me, for instance, to go get a massage and acupuncture. And at some point it's like, oh man, because it's an investment. It's an investment in time and of course resources, but just to allow it for myself. And I remind myself that I'm worth it, and that I don't have to get in pain first in order to justify it. I mean, when I was in pain, it was a lot easier to go. And now when things have eased off in that department, it's still allowing myself that, not saying, okay, that's a luxury. So, you know, to allow for myself is a whole other game.
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, it's easy to get distracted and forget, isn't it? Yeah. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Now it's your turn. Let's hear what one of you listeners has to say about being here in the transformation community.
Here's Elke from Hamburg. And always when I listen to Being Here or took part in a Being Here session, I feel so relaxed.
Do you want to have well-being with consistency? Connect with people all over the world from the comfort of your own home at Ariel & Shire's lively interactive Living Made Easy virtual seminars. Join any of their 2-hour online events or take a deep dive into the magic of being you at a virtual weekend seminar. Come on, let's connect. Find out more and register at transformationmadeeasy.com.
If you'd like to join us for a Living Made Easy seminar, they're 2 hours. We have one this Saturday and next Monday. And our weekend seminars coming up.
We have New Beginnings, June 11th and 12th.
A hint, hint, each moment,
It's a new beginning.
unless you drag your story into it. And then there's Creativity and Intuition, July 30th and 31st. If you happen to be listening to this in the archives, you just need to go to transformationmadeeasy.com and see what's current. And if you aren't listening to this in the archives, you can go to transformationmadeeasy.com and register. And shout out today to Dagmar.
In Hamburg,
We did
Germany.
a thing out and about asking people what they would like to hear on Being Here, and a whole host of people submitted ideas and descriptions, and this was Dagmar's. And without further ado, let's welcome Dagmar to the podcast.
Hey there.
So are you in Hamburg today?
Yes, I am.
Welcome to being here.
Thank you. It's really good to see you.
Really good to see you too.
Yeah. The topic, going with the flow, really speaks to me. You know, there's something in it that I find very, very attractive, that really touches me. And I also have this very persistent voice in my head that already shouted out when you talked to Maike before, and you said something along the lines of, getting somewhere is maybe not what this is all about. You know, the voice in my head went like, what? No, wait, that can't be true. You know, so that voice, I don't know, it keeps telling me that going with the flow is not a good idea, because then I wouldn't get anything done, you know. So for
But you
getting
know,
things done.
you get a lot more done when you go with the flow than when you don't. You get a
Yes.
lot more done because you're there as you're doing what you're doing.
Well, we've known you for a while, and we've seen you go through different iterations of your life. Now, we didn't meet you when you were getting your doctorate in English, but I imagine that when you bucked your internal flow, studies were much harder for you on those days and those moments than when you went with the flow.
Yes.
And since you're studying again now for an additional degree in something which I don't recall at the moment, you're probably having that experience in this time frame.
Yes, that's true. And I've experienced that life is so much easier and it feels so much better and more relaxed when I go with the flow. But that voice in my head is still there, you know?
Well, of course
Well,
it
that
is.
voice in your head is going to be there until the day it stops, and then you will also. You know, that voice is there. It's part of the machinery of your physical existence. So thinking you'd be better off without it is the voice saying, I'd be better off without this voice.
However, you know, we haven't really spoken specifically about the 3 principles of instantaneous transformation. And I see going with the flow, to use this as a quote, more as the 3rd principle. Anything you see and allow to be exactly as it is, it's as if you're moving into it.
And it completes itself in an instant.
And the first principle, I actually see it like a river. I remember when I was a kid, I had a girlfriend and her family took us to the Columbia River on a boat. And the river is a large river between Washington State and Oregon State, near where I lived. And we jumped in the water. And what happened was I had no clue how strong the flow of the river was. And it started pulling us downriver away from the boat. And my first inclination was to panic, because I had the perception that I wasn't a very good swimmer. And then I realized that panic, even in my young age, that panic was not going to serve me, that I could swim with it down the side of the boat and grab at a different point, and I was still safe. But fighting against it, I would have very quickly gotten myself into deep trouble because I would have tired. And it's such a perfect real life metaphor for what happens when we find ourselves in a situation that we didn't expect, and we're trying to get back to where we were, that we think is preferable to where we are.
Yeah, that sounds, the image that comes up in my mind when I hear that is that when there are times where I experience going with the flow and things really flow and it's easy. But there are also times, and I don't quite know how I end up in those, but there are times when I'm off center or something.
Let
And
me tell you how you end up in those.
okay.
It's called upset.
Huh.
So there's some kind of shock. There's some kind of threat to your survival. There's some possibility of physical impact. And immediately your mechanical nature takes over. And suddenly you're in an old way of relating to life rather than being appropriate to what the moment is requesting.
Yes, that sounds very true. Because then I fight stuff, you know, I
You
like
get
what you
information
said
you don't like, that's jarring to your natural flow. You'd like things to be easy, and suddenly you've got this obstacle in your path that wasn't there before, and now you are complaining to yourself that you have that rather than looking and seeing what needs to be done to deal with it.
It's as if you can look right in there, you know.
You know, as Dagmar said that, she pointed to her head as if you can look right in there in her head. No, we look right in here. We know what it's like to be
a human being.
So we share from personal experience.
Yes.
Like, and Shai and I were discussing it this morning because not too long ago, Back went out and it's in the recovery phase. And that what happens when you've had an injury or a shock or something, you know, you don't want, like on Tuesday, he's fully functional, has a bit of an injury. On Wednesday, there's impairment, and your mind rushes forward to what this will mean for the future. And that's where you go.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, yes, I do.
You know, recently you told us that you've been diagnosed with Parkinson's.
And before we recorded today, we asked you if it was okay to speak about that. So we're not just suddenly blurting this out and you're not grimacing.
Right. And interestingly enough, in the last couple of weeks, I've come on some people who have Parkinson's.
Okay.
And they are the victims of their Parkinson's. They don't want it, they don't like it, and they are resisting as mightily as they know how. They're very miserable people now because they're complaining about every aspect of their life rather than being where they are in the flow of their life and living there as though that's where their life is. So I have a bit of a back injury now.
Mm-hmm.
I can complain to myself about it, or I can walk a little more gingerly so I don't keep re-damaging myself by trying to lift heavy loads rather than letting it relax and heal itself. Now, what I noticed about these people, I was down the river the other day, a big river near our home, the Delaware River, and there was a fellow there fishing, and he told me he had Parkinson's. And he was in a complaint that it affected the way he could fish, that he couldn't cast well anymore. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that he was proving to himself that he was a mess rather than enjoying being on the water. I said, I'm sorry that you have Parkinson's, but I'm glad you're letting yourself go fishing. But he wasn't going to let himself have a good time whilst fishing.
Because his physicality wasn't what it once was.
See, all I know is, look, I'm 81 years old now. I can't do what I could do when I was 60 or 40 or 20. But if I'm in my
real time and in your body,
in my experience of living in this moment, I deal with this moment as it shows up rather than complain to myself that my back is hurting. See, and I am so inspired by you.
Shai woke up this morning and he's like, Dagmar has Parkinson's. It doesn't have her.
Oh, It gives me goosebumps when you say that,
But
because
that's my experience with you, my dear.
However, when you're upset, in those moments you're upset and rushing up to the future, that's when it has you.
yes,
But here's the thing, that doesn't have to do with Parkinson's, doesn't, like
It
Shia
has to do with
has,
life.
Shia has an autoimmune disease
Mhm.
and it does not have him.
Mm.
However, you know, when you're upset, when you want it to be different, any circumstance of your life has you at that point. Whether
Yeah.
it's like, oh man, I was going to go out and it's raining today, or, you know, I was supposed to do this and I got this phone call and I had to attend to that. You know, when you
Resist
This-
how your life is showing up, you get stuck right there. You know,
Yeah.
life stops being fun when you say no to how life is.
yeah, and then it becomes a struggle. Up like swimming, you know, against the flow.
Yes.
It's so good to talk to you. It really is.
Well, you're an inspiration, my dear.
Mhm.
Thank you.
It's good to talk with you as well.
You know, I know this segment's coming to a natural conclusion, but I'm recalling you translate for us sometimes on the Saturdays when Saturday mornings are often translated, the Living Made Easies into German, and also the once a month Tuesdays. And we rotate translators who volunteer, lovely people, and you're one of them. And it's funny how when you stop the action in your mind to apply something to think about yourself, it's exactly what we were talking about
As a departure
with
point.
Shia's casting the other day, where all of a sudden it degraded because he had that micro thought about how to do it.
Mhm.
And that's not a failing on his part or your part. It's a real time in the moment indicator of when you're fully here and when you're not. And life becomes this incredibly fun game when you start recognizing when you're talking to yourself as opposed to simply living.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome
you.
so much. By the way, next week's episode is celebrating 15 years of the Being Here podcast. And so in honor of that, the episode title is Feels Like the First Time. We'll be back next week,
So come on back.
and don't miss
Being
being
here.
here.